Hi, Andy XL, back with another NFXL podcast and breaking off from my state of the franchise addresses, which I've been doing for the first 17 of 32 NFL teams so far in reverse order of their draft picks, um, or where they would have been in the draft order if they hadn't traded draft picks away. You get what I mean? I'm breaking off from that now to look forward to day one of the NFL draft combine tomorrow. Now, tomorrow is the day we see defensive tackles, um, outside linebackers, inside linebackers, and defensive ends show their worth on Combine Day. Also, the kickers and punters. So I thought I'd give you a quick look at how those classes look going into the Combine, and then maybe if we come back in a week or 10 days and look at where how the standards have changed, we'll see who's had a good or bad combine. Right. So let's start with the defensive tackles. Now, I'm just going to go down a list of defensive tackles here. It's going to be, just reading out a list. 25 of them I've got who feature in my top 250 on my big board currently. So I'll give you the order they come in terms of defensive tackle rankings and where they are overall on my draft board right now. So defensive tackle, like I say, my number one guy is Peter Woods out of Clemson, who's 27 on my big board. The second defensive tackle is Caden McDonald of Ohio State, who's just one position behind at 28. Lee Hunter's the third defensive tackle out of Texas Tech, 32 on my big board. Caleb Banks is my DT4 out of Florida, 35 on the big board. And at 39 on my big board, and the fifth DT is Kristen Miller out of Georgia. Now, those five are all between 27 and 39 on my big board. So there's really nothing in it. Woods has been on the side recently. I might come back to that in a minute when I get to the back end of this list. But those five are the clear best five guys because after Miller at 39, we then drop to 75 on my big board for the sixth defensive tackle is Daryl Jackson out of Florida State. 77 on my big board is Dominic Orange, out of Iowa State, who's the seventh DT. DT8 is Dante Corleone, the Godfather, out of Cincinnati, who's 92 on my big board. Then there's another gap of 25 spots to the ninth defensive tackle, who's Chris McClellan out of Missouri. He's a little bit on the rise at the moment. He's 117 on my big board. Tim Keenan out of Alabama is the 10th defensive tackle at 121 on my big board. 11 DT11 is Grayson Horton, Oklahoma, 124 on the big board. DT12 is Rayshawn Benny out of Michigan, 131 on my big board. DT13 is Zane Durant out of Penn State, 135 on the big board. Quite close together, this lot. DT14 is Xavier Harris out of Ole Miss, 137. Skylar Gill Howard is the DT15 out of Texas Tech at 146. DT16 is DeMonte Caphart, I should say, out of Clemson at 154. DT17 is Texas A&M Aggie Albert Regis at 156. Then there's a bit of a gap to DT18 Caleb Proctor out of Southeast Louisiana, 182 on my big board. DT19 is Cameron Ball of Arkansas at 202. Tennessee Vols Bryson Eason is the 20th defensive tackle in my list at 203 on the big board. 21 is Aaron Graves out of Iowa, 206 on the big board. 22nd defensive tackle is Jordan Vanderberg out of Georgia Tech, 215 on the big board. 23rd defensive tackle is Keanu Tanavasa at BYU, 216. And then the last couple, David Easton out of Minnesota, 235 on the big board. And the 25th defensive tackle in my rankings is South Carolina's Nick Barrett at 248 on my big board. Now, looking briefly at this position, Woods seems to be on the slide draft stock wise, so that makes this an open contest to be the first defensive tackle in this draft. Like I say, all five of those listed in that sort of end of round one, beginning of round two on my big board have a chance to be the first defensive tackle taken, and as such, all have a chance of being first round picks. Lee Hunter has been the buzz guy in this class in recent weeks. Those five are clear of the rest of this class going into the combine. Then we get to be then there's a group that are vying to be the sixth defensive tackle, but all could go later rather than earlier on day 2 as it stands. So if you want one of those top 5, you may need to go early on day 2 to get them, depending on how many go on late on day 1. After the top 8 in this class, there is plenty of depth, but those lower than 8 on this list are the ones that need to show up and do well at the combine to push themselves towards that top group. So moving on to what I grouped together under the banner edge, which are the outside linebackers and defensive ends. Again, run down this list, and I'll just say, so for David Bailey, he's the edge 1, and the last number will be his overall big board position. So edge 1 is David Bailey, Texas Tech, 3 on the big board. 2 is Ruben Bain, Miami, 6 on the big board. 3, Keldrick Falk, Auburn, who's 16th ranked overall. Akeem Messidor is the 4th edge guy out of Miami, 22 on the big board. Cassius Howell of Texas A&M is my 5th edge guy at 25. TJ Parker out of Clemson is my 6th edge guy at 33. 7th is Zion Young out of Missouri at 38 on the big board. 8th is R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, who's 42 on my big board. Joshua Joseph of Tennessee is the 9th edge guy at 52. Derek Moore is the 10th out of Michigan at 56. Gabe Yakas of Illinois is 60 on my big board and 11th in the edge rankings. Romulo Height is on the slide. He's 12th in the edge rankings from Texas Tech and 66 on the big board. LT Overton of Alabama is 68th on my big board and 13th in my edge rankings. Danny Dennis Sutton is 78 on my big board and 14th in the edge rankings from Penn State. USC's Anthony Lucas is 98 on my big board and 15th in my edge rankings. 16th edge guy is Tyreek Sapp out of Florida, 110 on the big board. Kieron Crawford of Auburn is 115 on my big board and 17th in the edge rankings. Central Florida's Malachi Lawrence comes in at 18th in the edge rankings, 120 on the big board. Caden Curry, 19 and 125 out of Ohio State. Nadami Tucker is 20th in the edge rankings and 138 on the big board from Western Michigan. Indiana's Mikel Camara, 155 on the big board, 21st in the edge rankings. Max Llewellyn is 22 in the edge rankings and 172 on the big board from Iowa. Texas Longhorn Trey Moore is 185 on the big board and 23 on the edge rankings. 24 is Wesley Williams, 25 is Contavious Hutchins from Duke and Boston College, and they're 186 and 187 respectively on the big board. Logan Farno is 195 on the big board out of Utah. Ethan Burke out of Texas is 196 on my big board. Isaiah Smith is 214 from SMU. Caleb Elarms Orr out of TCU is 221. And finally, the 30th ranked edge guy is George Gums out of Florida at 237. So this is one of the best positional classes in this draft. As many as 6 or 7 could go in round 1, bringing all those onto this list into that, in that part of this list into the round 1 possibility sphere. I think all of my top 8 have a chance of going in round 1. Bailey is the one who scouts seem to be falling in love with, and he's vaulted above Bain into being the top guy. But Bain's another outstanding prospect in this class. The next 6 will fight to get into round 1, as I say, but with at least 14 likely to go in the first 2 days, those that miss out will not be waiting long on day 2. Those on the rise recently, Akeem Messidor, Zion Young and Derek Moore, whilst Romulo Height, Caden Curry and Mikael Kamara are not firing so well in terms of their draft stock. So they need to turn it round at the combine. Messidor, Young and Moore may have an opportunity to build on what they've done. So finally, not finally, because I'm going to have a quick look at kickers and punters, but let's have a look at inside linebackers ahead of their day in the combine tomorrow. Well, Arvell Reese, is he an inside linebacker or an outside linebacker? Whatever he is, he's my top inside linebacker in these rankings, and 2 on the big board. Then the second inside linebacker is Sonny Styles, another Ohio State guy who's 12 on my big board. CJ Allen of Georgia is 30 on the big board. Anthony Hill of Texas at 41. Jake Golday of Cincinnati at 53. Jacob Rodriguez, Texas Tech at 67. Deontay Lawson, Alabama at 70. Josiah Trotter of Missouri at 72. Kyle Lewis of Pittsburgh at 88. Michigan's Joshua Barham is my 10th inside linebacker at 100 on my big board. Harold Perkins out of LSU is at 109. Torian York at Texas A&M is 122. Lander Barton of Utah at 141. National champion Indiana's Aidan Fisher at 167. Jimmy Ralder of Michigan at 177. Justin Jefferson of Alabama at 205. Red Murdoch from Buffalo at 207. Keyshawn Elliott of Arizona State at 212. And the last one who makes it into the top 250 on my big board is the inside linebacker 19, Owen Heinicke of Oklahoma at 226. So not many inside linebackers have gone in round one. That's been the tradition. But this is another strong positional class. And we could even see three go in the opening round in 2026, which would be well above average. Reese, who may be deployed other than as a linebacker in the NFL, as I say, will go early, and Styles could go in the top half of round one too. And one or even two more may join them late in round one. As many as 10 could go in the first 2 days, which, as I say, would be an exceptional for an inside linebacker class. If I was picking out one who's making a positive move recently, it's Kyle Lewis, who's now number 9 on my inside linebacker rankings and 88 on the big board from Pittsburgh. So can he keep the momentum going, and can others? What can they show us at the combine? Right, let's just give you my top 5 kickers and punters going into the combine, just for fun. So my top 5 kickers: 1, Dominic Zavada of Michigan; 2, Trey Smack of Florida; 3, Drew Stevens of Iowa; 4, Luca Lombardo of Boston College; and 5, Noe Rualas of Central Florida. The punters: Wes Powell is at 1 of Oklahoma State. Brett Thorson is the second one from Georgia. The third one is Jake Stonehurst from Syracuse. Florida's Tommy Doman is my 4th punter, and the 5th one is Ryan Eckley out of Michigan State. So those are the guys I'd be particularly keeping my eye on going into the combine tomorrow. And obviously anybody else who has an outstanding day tomorrow could vault themselves up into those rankings. So let's come back in about, like I say, in a week or 10 days and see how the pictures change, and then we'll know who's had a good or bad combine. So that's my day one combine preview done, as it were. I'll come back one of these each day. So looking forward to the second day of the combine, and the positions that we'll be trying out there, which I'm just pulling my notepad. It'll be the guys in the secondary and tight ends, basically. So safeties, cornerbacks, and tight ends on day 2. So I'll come back with that one tomorrow night, so you know who to look out for on day 2 of the combine. See you soon.